Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Ioannou. I'm the head of IT for an architectural practice in the UK with only 50 endpoints, but our clients are major investment firms, finance houses, and insurance companies. So we've always had to punch above our weight when it comes to security. Now, the first thing to do is take a step back, because it doesn't really matter what the attack is or how sophisticated the scam is, whether criminals are using an automated bot army to do their bidding. There are only four main ways they make money. It all boils down to either extortion, fraud, theft, and if they're a cyber criminal, unauthorized use of our computers and networks and assets. Each way offers a different expectation of the amount of time before the criminal's paid, or facilitates the others. So them trying to drop a Trojan in to get unauthorized use, because the criminals aren't going to go and subscribe and pay for cloud services. They're going to reuse our assets. So extortion generally is the quickest way the criminals get paid, as the victims directly pay them because they put time restrictions on, followed by fraud, which then with theft is the slowest, as the criminals often used to have to sell the data or use mules to launder money. So by understanding and taking a step back at how they make money and the psychological tricks they use, you can identify gaps and risks, raise awareness, and put in place more effective security controls. So let's look at each of the four ways in more detail. So with extortion, these are the payments you're forced into making. It's summed up by one of two questions put to the victim: either pay up or there will be consequences, or pay up to make it stop. It offers criminals an immediate income, as the victims are asked to pay via cryptocurrencies within a defined time frame, after which the ransoms increase, the severity of the consequences are increased, or the ability to roll back the consequences is no longer an option. And we all know this as the ransomware, which encrypts our data, the ransomware that locks you out of your machine, the ransom demand not to share data they've stolen from us or obtained by fraud, or a ransom demand not to share data you thought was private, for example, compromising videos or photos, and then the ransom demand to stop a denial of service attack on your infrastructure. And lastly, there's a ransom demand based on scare tactics and lies to try and trick you, whether real or fake. So the incentives to pay include the threat of permanently deleting your data or rendering your computer unusable. And paying an extortion ransom has no guarantee, as we know, that criminals will actually carry out their end of the deal. Though odds are, if it's fully automated, they will, because if word gets out that if you pay, you don't get the decryption keys back, then it affects their long-term income. The thing is, ransomware has evolved and now includes a limited file decryption, normally to act as proof, and bizarrely even help desks where you can contact and get help to guide you through the process of buying cryptocurrencies, which was always notoriously difficult. We move on to fraud though. These are the payments you're tricked into making, which we know, discovering you've been conned, defrauded, tricked, however you phrase it, isn't pleasant. And cyber fraud is a lot harder to stop, because let's face it, digital assets can be easily copied from genuine companies and organizations and then repurposed by the criminals. There's no ID requirement to set up an email address or get a pay-as-you-go mobile. And with these, you can create accounts on social media networks and deploy cloud services. This allows the criminals to create convincing backdrop to facilitate their fraud that, with a bit of effort, can be practically indistinguishable from the genuine ones. Luckily, many criminals don't put that much effort. So being vigilant and looking for small mistakes, you can spot most fraudulent emails and websites. Though cyber fraud is quite an extensive list. We know of the advanced fee fraud, where you have to pay an admin fee to claim whether it's a competition, a solicitor's fee for some fake inheritance. There's the fake service payments. We've been hit by fake road tax in the UK. Recently, the government has redirected over 1 million people in the past 9 months from fake websites, and that's the tax department. We also have, the IT telephone support scams that have just been going on ever since I've been in IT, which is over 20 years. We have fake invoices, fake software purchases and upgrades. We've even got fake online casinos, as well as fake financial investment products and fake excess fee owned, which are the parcel delivery scams. The criminals can then also just move on to the tried and tested form of theft, which now, due to the incredible speed of the internet, which is available to most people, it allows the criminals to steal data from them without them realizing. What would have previously taken hours can now take seconds. Whether the victim inadvertently enters financial information into a fake website, a keylogger captures their keystrokes, or a Trojan is uploading their files, the result's the same. It's ID theft, credential theft, financial theft, or just plain data theft. The stolen information is then either sold on to other criminals or used to facilitate extortion, fraud, or theft. Sorry, not theft, or unauthorized use. Months can go by and you won't realize anything's amiss if the criminals choose to be stealthy. And it's often a third party that informs you you've been compromised. And lastly, as criminals don't want to pay for their global IT infrastructure or data bandwidth, they use ours. When they compromise a computer, they have one of two choices. Option 1, exploit the machine to extort, trick, steal from the owner. Or option 2, exploit the machine to commit extortion, fraud, and theft on behalf of someone else. Individually, your computer resources are quite limited, but when hundreds of thousands are linked together to form a botnet, the available computing resources becomes vast. On the affected computers, the users are typically quite unaware, other than the computer behaving slightly slower than usual. Assuming that is that the infected computer is one that has a screen and interface, as now the criminals are looking to infect internet-enabled devices like security cameras, smart devices, even home internet routers to do their bidding. So from this, the most common types of unauthorized use becomes botnets for hire, ad fraud, spam relays, denial of service attacks, cryptocurrency mining, password brute forces, virus propagation, web servers, command and control servers, storage servers, and just a plain remote access Trojan whenever they want to get access. Thing is, it's important to understand that the criminals can decide to stop using the resources of your machine and change tact at any time, as they effectively have full control. So what might start out as unauthorized use can quickly change to theft or extortion. Also, the criminals aren't restricted themselves to what we think of as computers. And they're quite happy to compromise anything with a computer inside. And with the Internet of Things booming now, there are just millions of devices. Now, we need to defend against this. And the first step you need to do is know what you're defending. Now, my IT strategy involves no legacy apps, cloud first, where possible, no front-facing services. I have no websites hosted internally. There is no remote access via remote desktop externally. My email's in the cloud, my databases are in the cloud, and all my software licenses in the cloud. So the first step is reducing your overall footprint of what the criminals can attack and what you can be compromised on. So I've done this through the use of Office 365, services like Log Me In, lots of collaboration systems, and much to my annoyance, the fact that I'm going to lose Windows Phone, because let's face it, yes, it only had a very small percentage of the market, which meant the criminals weren't targeting it. So I could quite safely check any malicious email on my Windows Phone and know it wasn't going to do anything. So the main things is that there's 6 basic areas that we have to cover: antivirus, patch management, email filtering, web filtering, admin privilege, and access control. And I spend quite a lot for a small business on security, but that still works out at less than a mobile phone contract per person. A monthly typical mobile phone contract, I spend less. All my systems, and I have over 10 of them, to facilitate our security, comes in about £22 a month in UK sterling. A typical mobile phone contract for a business works out at £30 a month here. But the 6 basic areas aren't the whole story. You really need 9 areas for true cover. On top of that, you need to add forensics and also monitoring. And the big one in the middle is, if it does fail you, that you need good backups, because that's what everything will fall back on if you've been compromised. If you've lost stuff, you know, it's your backups that are going to save you. A ransomware infection, it's your backups that will save you. If you have been infected, the monitoring will alert you, and then it's the forensics bit that help you work out exactly what's happened. Now, it's important to ask yourself, are you spending your security budget wisely? Are you buying the Ferrari equivalent in security software when you really need a 4x4, a small compact, and a van to cover all the scenarios you're trying to defend against? I go to all sorts of IT exhibitions and events, security events, and the vendors are there. And how much does their product cost? You ask them and they tell you, oh, I'm not in sales, I'm technical, or I'm in marketing, but they're lying. They know how much their systems cost. They just don't want to tell you, because it always seems to come across as a scary figure. The main thing I'm trying to work out is what the per person per month cost is. And then you get down, it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 people in your company, if it costs $2-3 a month to add this particular, it's a lot easier to ask for $3 than it is to ask for 30,000. So these are my cyber defenses that in total cost me £22 per person per month. Some are enterprise grade, some are more geared up for small business. But what I've tried to do is let bigger firms do the due diligence. So I use CyberArk, which I know from Deloitte that they use it, though that wasn't the best example until recently. Zscaler is a massive web filter, and I know they're used by our health service here. FuseMail is also used by our government and local county councils. Office 365, well, practically everyone uses that, so that's, and as an early adopter, I've been moaning at them for the past, what, 6 years now, 7 years. And then there's a host of other AV. But let's look how it all breaks down, because each one has a particular task. So I actually have 4 systems in place for email. I have Office 365, but I then pay for 3 other additional cloud services just to make Office 365 work the way you would expect it to. When it comes to attachments and email links, one of the additional ones I pay for is actually back with Microsoft themselves for an additional attachment filter and a point-in-time email check on any hyperlinks. So it stops what I call the Jamie Oliver effect. Now, Jamie Oliver is a famous chef in the UK, and his website a few years ago was hacked like 3 times. And people will be directed to his website, and it'll be a legitimate email that would arrive. And so what you want to do is not just check the emails when they're sent, but also when the user clicks on them. And then to protect that with the internet, I've got Cisco Meraki security firewalls, and then I'm scanning all my web traffic, both HTTP and HTTPS through Zscaler. And then if something still punches through, I've got my desktop antivirus, which also includes patch management. I've got a specific anti-ransomware product in Sophos Intercept X, which allows us to roll back local files, a rule-based antivirus, so anti-ransomware product with Crypto Prevent, and privilege management through CyberArk. And then as I'm an SMB, I really don't want my service to be my problem, so I actually pay for a managed service for SentinelOne enterprise grade security, which actually has a $1,000 per unit anti-ransomware guarantee if you choose to take it out for, I think it was $30 when I took the product. But I asked, have they ever paid out in all their time? And the answer was no. So it didn't seem worth it. So I've got a mixture of defenses, and where they come together is the fact that they're all layered up to give me the equivalent of wearing 8 bulletproof vests. It doesn't really matter which one stops the bullet, so long as one of them does. So let's look actually how does the malware arrive? Well, typically, according to studies, 60% roughly is coming via email, of which 31% of that goes back out to the internet. So 55% really is coming via the internet. So email and the internet has to be your main focus. When it comes to memory cards and USB drives being dropped in car parks, that accounts for a very minor percentage. Same with social media, it's a very low percentage. So this is the trail of how my defenses work when it comes to the email side of things and how it affects the internet. So an email arrives, it's filtered by FuseMail in the cloud. I believe in filtering all your emails before they arrive, because that puts less load on your servers. I then journal everything to another cloud-based compliance archive before it hits a load of additional Office 365 rules. And then depending on whether it's a link or an attachment, it goes for another filter. And then if it's a link, it then goes through all the layers before ending up on the user's computer. Each point is an opportunity to stop something malicious. So Cisco Meraki blocks a whole load. Zscaler blocks even more. And then I'm down to the desktops. And then if something tries to run, if it hasn't been spotted by the AV programs, then if it needs admin privilege, then CyberArk will kick in and go, no, that's not allowed to run. I don't know what that is. So this whole layering up means I can improve my security massively without actually spending a silly amount of money. Just by choosing the right products for my budget and my company size and making judgment calls. So for the internet, it's OpenDNS, it's my layer 7 unified threat management firewalls. So I've blocked peer-to-peer at layer 7. I've done all sorts of things, which for me as a small business, Meraki is not cheap, but it's easy, it's out the box, it's cloud managed, doesn't matter where I am. Zscaler is another one. There's no boxes with any of these. Sorry, Meraki there's a box, but with Zscaler there's no box to install. It works regardless of where the user is. So when they're in the office, they're behind my UTM firewall, but when they're not, they're still protected. When it comes to the user's computer, the endpoint security also includes patch management. Patch management for me is the way you close all the gaps, because let's face it, there are hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities in our computers. When you first see CyberArk run, it tells you that your machine has 30,000 programs that it's protecting. Where's all that come from? It's just how Windows is built. That's before you add on Microsoft Office, Adobe Flash, Adobe Reader, Java if you use it. So patching, for me, we patch very quickly because we have no legacy app. Everything works on Windows 7, 8, and 10. I haven't got anything that has to be kept for some particular bespoke bit of software. I removed Java from practically all machines, only to find that about a dozen of my machines still had Java on when you looked in the services. It turns out the RAID controller had an instance of Java hard-coded from 3 years ago, and it was still running. So it's worth really checking. If you remove certain systems and features, make sure they aren't running still, but there's something else might still be calling them. And least privilege, I pay for CyberArk, but you can just run everyone as standard users instead of admin users. You know, do they need admin rights to work? If you don't use Windows, if you use Linux, it's a standard feature, but every home user of Windows is set up as an administrator unless they go in and make changes. And when it comes to my server, like I say, I'm a small business, so I want managed security. I want to know that if something happens on a Friday evening, that someone will be there to investigate. So come Monday morning, I don't come to a complete mess and find that nothing works. So, and being a fully managed service, it still works out cheaper than some of the offerings I've seen where people are trying to sell me antivirus and then for someone's time as a consultancy to look after it. Going for the fully managed worked out less than a quarter of the cost of some of the other quotes I had. So let's look at what we do to stop extortion, the payments you're forced into making. So application whitelisting and rights management, for me, that makes a big difference because I know that unless CyberArk knows about the program, it won't let it run. Also, a lot of the vulnerabilities need admin rights, and if your users aren't running it, it cuts out a lot of those problems. Having multiple anti-ransomware blocks even more. So if something does punch through, if it knows about it or thinks it's suspicious, it will then stop it. So if anything starts encrypting files, you know, after I think half a dozen, it'll kick in and say, hey, in a minute, I don't like what you're doing. Crypto Prevent actually puts in over 40,000 policies that stops things from running. And Crypto Prevent, I paid I think $300 for the entire company. It doesn't have to be expensive. There are solutions out there. I didn't actually want Sophos. I was after a more expensive system, but budgets didn't allow it. So it was a compromise for me, but it still works. Like with your cars, sometimes, yes, it's not the car you want that you drive, but it still gets you from A to B. Now, emails, remember, are still the main infection route. And for me, we filter and block over 40% of all our incoming emails. Now, considering I only have 36 to 40 people, we receive 40,000 emails a month. In architecture, we're an information focal point. Our construction drawings go out to 50 different companies for practically every job, and everyone is sending us things we've never seen before. So filtering in the cloud makes a big difference. Now, when it comes to stopping fraud, that boils down to just quarterly staff security awareness training. Educating staff is a big priority. They know what to look for. The human firewall is what it's often called. It makes a difference, but it's no good just doing it once when they start or once a year. You need to keep it up. You need to remind people, show people that your systems, what they are blocking, because people, they get complacent. They think, oh, the security system will kick in. It doesn't matter if I click. And you have to explain to them the limitations of your system, and it's much better if they make the judgment call and don't click on the link. They don't open the attachments. And feel free to actually contact support, removing that whole blame culture. Encourage them to explain what a security incident is, so they know that, if they've written down credentials and they've lost them because it was on a post-it note, or they've stuck the post-it note to their computer and there's visitors in the building. There's so many different ways. And awareness training doesn't have to be long and formal. I break mine up, and whoever can attend, we do it remotely, some people locally. I'll even do on the worst culprits for causing issues. I'll sit down with them on a one-to-one basis and explain to them, because spending the time, because people will say, yes, I understand, but you have to keep reminding them, because the problem isn't going away. Filtering your web traffic also makes a big difference. So this is just in 1 month report. Zscaler blocked 5,000 plus incidents. Remember that this is an organization with less than 50 endpoints. So the more you can filter, the better. Another big thing you can do is also let people do personal things on personal devices. If they're not checking their personal email on your own computers, it means there's less chance of something malicious coming via their personal email account. So just having Wi-Fi throughout the building that the staff can use, that your colleagues can use, so they can use personal devices. It goes back to lowering the attack surface. So when it comes to stopping theft from transferring data to the criminals, well, passwords aren't enough. Two-step verification is now a must. And when it comes to personal use, it doesn't cost anything. You can turn on two-step verification for Amazon, for PayPal, for all personal email, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, Hotmail, or Yahoo Mail. They will let you turn on two-step verification to your mobile, either via a text message or their app, for free. Even Office 365 offers two-step verification for free for admin users. And your admin users' credentials are the keys to the castle, so it's important to protect them. And then there's services, identity services, that will help manage the whole process. For me, I've only partially enabled two-step verification, and it's part of our new law of GDPR coming into effect in May, where I've asked for the budget for later this year to roll it out across all our systems. But two steps in places in multiple places already. And it makes a big difference, because they can't log in another country or another location as you without your phone. And so they can't steal the data that way. So when it comes to stopping unauthorized use, it comes down to monitoring. The dashboards of all the systems give a lot of information, but if you don't look at it, it makes no difference. You know, a lot of breaches, there were alerts, there's just no one looking at them. You know, Target was one of the worst in the US, and they actually paid for an expensive monitoring system, but the email alerts were going to an account apparently that no one was looking at. So it's important to spend time and see what's going on, because this is what will give you a clue that something may be amiss. And remember, just because it all works today, it doesn't mean all your security systems will work tomorrow. The criminals are constantly adapting and investing. When it comes to software vulnerabilities, in the last 3 years, there was nearly 2,500 vulnerabilities in Windows, Internet Explorer, Flash, and Java. And people say, oh, I don't use Internet Explorer. You don't have to. It's built into the operating system in Windows. It's there regardless. But these vendors have been working hard to remove the vulnerabilities. You know, we're now down to under 200, but 200 is still a lot of opportunities for the criminals. The thing is, the criminals are automating everything now. They build it into exploit kits and sold as a web service to other criminals. So all you need to have is one old version of Java, a particular flaw. You land on a website and in seconds, before you realize, it's found the vulnerability and done what it's needed to do, and you're none the wiser. The criminals also can check every one of their malicious payloads with their version of VirusTotal. It's called scamforyou.net, and it costs them $30 a month for a subscription. And basically, every payload they intend to send out, they will check to see if the 35 mainstream antivirus engines will know about it and block it. So if you're working with any form of signature-based antivirus, believe me, it's next to useless, except once the payloads are at least 4 hours old. The criminals also moved to find ways to bypass a lot of my security by going through update servers. The recent infection of CCleaner, which bizarrely is owned by an antivirus company now, one of their updates was compromised, and because we all whitelist CCleaner, millions of users were infected. Luckily, the antivirus company realized what was going on and made changes, and I think on a mistake on the criminals' part stopped it from being one of the worst outbreaks ever. But this is just to show that the criminals will adapt. They will find ways. They are like water. They will keep constantly probing and find the weakest links. And when you do get infected, this is where your forensics comes in and the remediation features of your software. You need to be able to see what's been compromised, because what you may be seeing on one screen may just be smoke and mirrors. Then the real goal may be something else. So working out what happened is of importance. And if you don't want to do it yourself, there's companies that will do it for you. But having a way of working out what's happened and then have some way of removing the threats and seeing which machines were infected, how far the infection spread, what was changed. But it's also important not to forget the basics. You need to know what a file's really called. It's bizarre that the default in Windows is to hide file name extensions, and criminals use this. they will send you attachments that will look like something else because they know that the real extension will be hidden. And it's important not to stay still. You need to, well, I personally hold monthly security reviews, looking at all the dashboards that I report back up to the directors of the board. I need to show them what our systems are doing. Also, it's important to have a realistic per person budget. In the UK, we suffer, small businesses are notorious for not investing. They think, oh, we have antivirus, we're fine. We have a firewall, we're fine. But then when you explain that it will only defend against half of the attacks, this is where you have to invest in staff awareness training. You may not see the benefits, but if it happens to stop CEO fraud, if it stops someone changing the bank details and sending payments to the wrong place, it's worth it. It's important to layer up your solutions to make the budget go further. Not having a budget is not much of an excuse anymore because there are ways to do things with next to no budget. Also, it's important to look for the gaps in your own security. Just because it's working today, like I say, you need to keep checking. There is always things you can do to improve. But you have to encourage a no-blame culture. When something goes wrong, you need to look at what went wrong and why and fix it and move on. And for me, that means reviewing the market for better products. Just because I signed up with something for 2 years, if there's something better that will do the job and I can justify it as a business, then I will ditch a product. Because the ones I have now aren't necessarily the ones I really want to use. There's always other systems that, when I inquired, were too expensive. They didn't offer a cloud version that I needed, or they didn't scale down to my size, or didn't have particular features that I wanted. But a year later, things change. So it's important to go back and review what's available. So if you've attended this, I have a book with practical steps for everyday users, and it's been offered at a discount with the code PECB from my website. It covers all the things antivirus won't protect you against, from PayPal scams to other forms of fraud, online dating scams, and it's full of all examples of phishing emails. And it's geared up for anyone. It's not techie. And it also explains how to do things like disable Flash, remove Java, and all sorts of practical advice. And it's updated monthly. So at this point, I'll hand back.
Thank you, Nick, for delivering this very informative presentation. Before moving to the Q&A session, I want to inform you that PECB provides training and certification services for ISO 27032 Introduction, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. A PECB certificate will exemplify your dedication in implementing and managing these processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. Now, we will go ahead and take some time to answer some of the questions from the attendees regarding today's topic. One attendee asks, why do you think the number of cyber attacks is on the rise? Is it because we are not being able to hide our vulnerabilities, or is it another reason?
Well, we're living in times where we have super fast internet, cryptocurrencies, and cloud computing. It's the perfect storm for criminals. They can now make vast amounts of money with little chance of getting caught. One of the cryptocurrency gangs in Europe made 300 million euros in 3 years. They know this from the Bitcoin public ledger. The money's there for them. They can fully automate and attack anyone. It doesn't matter who you are now, because everyone literally has a supercomputer in their pocket. A Cray 2 supercomputer from 1985 costs $15 million. It has the same computing power as an iPhone 5. Our internet speeds, if you go back 20 years, or if anyone remembers dial-up, we take for granted what we can do. But the criminals use it all to their advantage. We're all moving to online banking. We do everything online, but we can't juggle the 50+ passwords we all need. And it's just endless opportunities for the criminals.
Thank you. Now there are two questions regarding the cloud services. One of them is, does the cloud protect you from ransomware? And another one is, he says that you seem to favor cloud services. How do I verify security solution deployed by a cloud provider? So if you can connect these two questions.
That the cloud providers will protect themselves from being hacked. They'll protect themselves. Their backups are for them, not for you. Whatever you need, you have to pay as an add-on. So if you want to verify the security, it normally means you have to choose it and pay for it. You know, all the standard offerings will include some basic functionality. But for me, as a small business, I favor software as a service. And then I layer up, because I'm the weak link, not the cloud service. You know, someone coming in via one of my desktops, one of my laptops, one of my users is the weak link, not the cloud service. Because they're in a much more secure environment, they have systems in place, their firewalls are better than mine. So it's a case of looking at the weakest link. And all the cloud vendors will offer additional security, and it's making sure that you're paying for what you need. Don't assume everything's there. People assume Office 365 is backed up. It's backed up for Microsoft to recover it, but if you ask from your files for 6 months ago, the answer is not there. So I favor cloud solutions, but all my data is local. Because the way we work, every click is automatically saved. In construction, we're very paranoid. So it's a case of asking the right questions when it comes to cloud services. Don't assume anything. Ask and see if there's, it's additional services you can pay. It doesn't have to be from the same vendor. When it comes, I go back to Office 365, I pay 2 other vendors for additional security. So whoever it is, just ask questions, because if they're legit and they know what they're doing, they'll have answers. Does that kind of answer both questions?
Yeah, I have another question linked to cloud services. It is, are you concluding that cloud services are more safe than having your services and applications on a physical box or server?
It depends what your business is. For me, my actual data is local, remember. All our drawings, all our documents are local. But what it is I don't want external systems coming in to access my server. I don't want emails arriving on my server. I don't want remote access requests on my server. I don't want remote database requests on my server. So it makes sense for me to let someone else have the problem. And if they are compromised, well, only that part of my business is affected. If there's a denial of service attack on my database, well, I've only lost temporary access to my database. I haven't lost access to my email. I haven't lost access to anything else. So it's a case of using cloud to its advantages rather than saying it's better. So I put support services, my antivirus, my filters, they're all cloud managed. I don't install anything local in the server. That way, if people are in the office, it makes no difference. The updates arrive the same speed because everyone is treated as being out of the office. It works for a company of my size, but these systems scale up massively. So you have to make your own judgment calls, because if you have your own in-house experts and you have the budget, then it's a hard call on which is the best. It depends on your own regulations. It depends what you want. For me, it's been a slow migration, but I started with cloud services in 2003 with collaboration systems. So it's been every year slowly removing things out of the rack. So to be a slim, efficient outfit where a lot of things just aren't my problem. And the good thing is, because we're not a 24/7 outfit, when there is an issue with a cloud service, we're only working 8 hours of the day roughly, so that only gives me a 1 in 3 chance of any issue really affecting me. So with those odds, for me, it makes a good rationale for moving things to the cloud. And we don't save money by being in the cloud. It actually works out more expensive, but I get more for my money than what I could spend. If I spent the same amount, I wouldn't have it as good. And I'd have to spend even more in the long run to try and get close to some of the additional resilience and redundancy. Because this all has to come back to business continuity and disaster recovery as well. And for me, a lot of the cloud services ticks those boxes rather than just security. So it's never an easy question to answer when it comes to, should I move to the cloud? Is it more secure? But if you do it right and you layer up your security as well, it's rarely these days going to be a really bad mistake. You just have to be careful you don't get trapped. Well, see, what I describe moving to the cloud as a lease car deal with the devil. You will always have the shiny new car, but you will forever be paying. If you're happy with that, if the payments suit you, then it's worth it. But if you find that you want to move after 5 years and now you have to pay a huge fee to get your data back, then it's not going to be for you. So it all boils down to just asking the right questions before you sign. Ask awkward questions, and if they can't answer it, they're not going to be right for you.
Thank you, Nick. Another attendee asks, how effective are free antiviruses and firewalls for small businesses that don't have the budget for premium security?
Like I said right at the beginning, my budget is the same as a mobile phone contract for someone. If you have got absolutely zero budget, then something is better than nothing. But you need to ask yourself, have you truly got a zero budget, or are you wasting it on coffee machines or other things in the business? If you can't find $10 a month per person, or even $5, you can put a lot in place. You've got to ask for a realistic figure. The thing is, don't ask, I need $5,000 for this. Say, I need $5 a month per person for this. It's a lot easier when you break it down to the individual numbers, because any firm of any decent size with employees in the hundreds, everything's going to be a scary figure. So if you keep it down to the per person cost, you'll be surprised that how far your budgets can realistically grow. Because if you work out what you're spending, if you spend $3 a day on coffee, well, that's $15 a week, that's $60 a month, that's $720 a year. So you need to apply the same principles to your security systems. Like as a Crypto Prevent, the whole package for the whole company was $300. It doesn't have to be expensive. And yes, some of the antivirus companies are offering basic security for free. Sophos offers for up to 10 users their business software for free. Kaspersky is launching a completely free entry-level So it's, my website has lots of free advice and things you can do. There's 12 steps you can take that have zero cost to make a difference. It is about choosing your security products wisely and not blowing the entire budget on an overly expensive product. But if you visit my website, there will be all sorts of advice that doesn't cost anything, because I've been through it where we had that zero budget, but still had to protect our data because our clients were still pension companies and finance houses. We just got hit hard by the recession. So I understand where people are coming from, but by asking the right questions and phrasing how you ask for money and making sure you focus on what needs to be protected. Because if you've got a box in the corner as a server and that needs replacing because it's running your email and it's running a database and it's running your security products, you need to ask yourself, well, do I actually need to replace it? Could I get rid of that and redirect all the money and improve my security? It's a case of taking a big step back and looking at what you have. That's what it boils down to, because nearly every business will find ways of saving money or repurposing money. But if you can, avoid the free antivirus. They won't protect you in the same way.
Thank you, Nick. Actually, we have a lot of questions for this session, but I want to inform you that because of the time limitation, we will only answer one more question for this webinar, and the rest of the questions will be answered by Mr. Nick through email accordingly. The last question is, could we conclude that a good enterprise security culture is the key to have a good information security? And if you can link this to the awareness sessions too, for the personnel.
Having a good layered security that covers all the bases. If you have all 9 areas from that early slide covered with products that other companies have done the due diligence and are using as well, it's part of their security strategy. You have a disaster recovery plan, you have a business continuity plan, you know what to do if there's a breach, and you spend time training and educating. And it's worth training and educating people from things that will affect them at home, because then it means something. And yes, you will massively improve your security, but there is no such thing as 100% total security. We don't live in that world. And the business owners need to understand that you are just literally wearing bulletproof vests and hoping one of them stops the bullet.
Thank you, Nick, again for this presentation, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I would like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website and YouTube channel, along with the slides of the presentation. For more information, visit our website www.pecb.com. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you.